This is the title of our session today. You probably, hopefully knew what you signed up for, but here we are. Across Hemispheres, arts-based, relationship-based, and process-based knowledge generation. And we already introduced ourselves a little bit, but here's what we're thinking of doing, and we can say more about who we are in a moment, but this is what we're going to do in this session. And it's going to be kind of workshopy and kind of hands-on for the first part, and then we'll have a discussion for the second part. So we're going to start with a quick round of introductions. We've already kind of started to do this, which is great, and I'm happy to see everybody and meet everyone. And then we're going to have a collaborative activity that's going to involve some images and some collaging. We'll give you prompts for that. It'll be really interesting for the three of you on one computer to try out this exercise. And that'll get us in the sort of frame of mind for a discussion in the second half, where we'll kind of reflect and think about kind of the work that everybody is doing in the spaces where they are. And our themes for the session are related to kind of thinking about how different people actually engage in practices in community spaces. And we're interested in arts-based practices, but also practices of relationship building, and kind of just thinking about how we actually do work that involves being in relation with other people, negotiating power, all the things that were laid out in the abstract for the session. So we'll be really excited to just have this interactive session and have a discussion about that stuff. So I think the first thing that we want to do is just get a better sense for who's in the room. We already kind of did this, but just a quick kind of who are you, where are you, what brings you to this session, and if land acknowledgements are part of what happens where you are located, something like that. Kind of a quick go around, and I can start. I'm Christian Anderson. As I said, I'm located in Seattle in the US on Coast Salish land. I work at the University of Washington, and I do a lot of work in thinking about kind of community participatory processes, collaborative work with communities where I am not the one leading the agenda or even necessarily doing the thinking, but I kind of am pulled along and try to be useful in the context of what people are already doing and respecting the knowledge that people already have out there. So that's part of what brings me to this session, and I will pass the word to my collaborator to introduce herself and say where she is and what brings her here.
Gracias. Soy Ana Inés Eras, estoy en Buenos Aires, Argentina. Lo que me trae a esta sesión, what brings me here, is that I have been working with Christian together in a group that is called Communities of Practice, something that I will explain later in this session. So that's just the headline for that. Estamos en la tierra donde originalmente habitaron los querandíes, y en Argentina hay muchos grupos de pueblos originarios que varios de ellos fueron exterminados y varios de ellos han sobrevivido. In Argentina we have very many different native peoples, and I was acknowledging the fact that many of them have been killed, kidnapped, assassinated, but many of them have survived. And in Buenos Aires, the people who were here prior to other people coming are called querandíes. And I'm in this session, like I said, because I'm interested in thinking collaboratively with other people other than Christian, with whom I've been working on this for a year or so, to expand our knowledge about what people consider practice either arts-based or practices of generating knowledge with other people. So that's my interest. So I pass the word on to Michelle.
Hello, I'm Michelle. I'm from Berlin, Germany. I study social work and master's degree, so we came from the university. Our wie sagt man das nochmal? Professor told us from there, and we gonna do a exam about this in the end. Yeah.
Who's your professor?
Esra Erdem.
Esra Erdem.
I put a little heart out.
You know her? Ah, cute.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, yeah, I give it to Laura.
Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna continue. So yeah, we are all part of the seminar with Esra that only started like 2 weeks ago. So we are quite new in the topic. It's all about social economies and critics of capitalism and stuff like that. And we are studying social working, and I think like yeah, thinking of economies in a community-based matter is very interesting. And so Esra told us that we can join the Ljubljana conference for a lot of sessions that we are interested in, and that's how we came here. And yeah, I'm very excited. And I pass it to Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura. Yeah, I'm also in the master degree of social work. Our focus on the master is social science, that we can do like research in the work of the field of social work. And one of our focus groups is about social economics, and this is the seminar where we came from to join this conference. And to complete our seminar, we are gonna reflect about this one of the sessions, and we decided to join in this session. And I gonna pass to Pablo.
Hola, can I speak in Argentino, in Spanish, for the presentation? Okay. Well, yo soy Pablo, estoy acá en la ciudad de Buenos Aires, in a neighborhood that's the name is Villa Santa Rita. ¿Y qué me trae a esta sesión? The first is the creative of the acrónimo del nombre del grupo, ABCDE. Art-based, art-based. Could you help me, Ana Inés? Art-based.
Arts-based Community Economies and Diverse Economies Working Group.
For me, this is great. Es muy lindo ese acrónimo. Y bueno, y trabajo con diferentes organizaciones autogestionadas que considero que producen conocimiento a través del arte o de la producción artística. Así que bueno, me atrajo esta sesión y también estoy contento de verlo a Cristian y a Viv, que en otros lugares me los crucé también. Y bueno, y escuchar que están trabajando con gente que también en algún otros lados me lo fui cruzando. Trabajo junto con Ana Inés desde el 2020 y en el 2021 ingresé a la red de economías comunitarias. Espero que se haya podido entender algo. Y si no, I can speak in English or translate some parts of the presentation.
Tenés que pasarle la palabra a alguien.
Y le paso la palabra a Clio.
Hi, I'm Cleo. I'm about a year into a PhD looking at I guess, potential connections between applied theatre and social ecological transformation. So I'm kind of interested in what arts, and specifically this type of arts that is kind of based on community knowledge generation and sharing in a context of flooding, what can be the potential, the transformative potential of this is kind of my research. And have come to this research from a background in social ecological economics. So interested in the economic activities that are happening and the way we're meeting our needs and provisioning outside of capitalist structures is kind of my background. And I'll pass the speaking to Heather.
Thanks, Cleo. Your work sounds great. I'm Heather McLean. I'm based right now. I'm working from East Vancouver. It's the unceded or stolen territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. And I work online for Athabasca University, and we're a small open access university. It's based in northern Alberta. And we provide undergraduate education to rural and remote students. I work with a lot of disabled students, neurodivergent students, and incarcerated students. We create a lot of material that we can mail to incarcerated students. So it's a neat university and interesting university in that you can get in to our university. So if you failed like high school, and we have a lot of working moms, people with a lot of jobs, a lot of contract jobs. So yeah, I have a background in community development and working with artist-run centers in Toronto. So quite precarious nonprofits sector jobs, and I found them quite overwhelming, the precarity of that work. So I did a PhD at York University in environmental studies, looking at performance studies and urban studies. And then ended up back doing all kinds of jobs, teaching at every university, taking Greyhound buses everywhere and writing about precarity. And I kept getting awards for it, and I kept getting precarious jobs forever. So anyways, 10 years later, I'm now working a lot online, and it's great. And my work is around, what's great, it's random. I'm on the internet all the time. But I do a lot of work with clowns and dancers. I'm really interested in embodied work and storytelling. And I'm very interested. I'm working with colleagues to make all kinds of really accessible prompts to get students to close their computer and land-based work. And I work with Indigenous scholars and disabled scholars. We're trying to make all kinds of really accessible prompts and materials that then translate online. So it's just like, I'm super interested in this work, but I was just editing another rubric, like it's so detailed because it's all about making it really clear to people and who are busy working. So yeah, just trying to get people out in the world. And what you said, Cleo, floods, I work with like the place I was living in before I moved here. We had forest fires, and I work with colleagues that have lost houses to floods after the forest fire. So it's really, we're literally making material about late capitalism and climate disaster in communities where we're like facing it. So yeah, it's like juicy though, like how to, okay, this is where we're at. So I'm super interested in that. And even when I came in here, I was ranting away. Like, so how to get grounded and make material that's accessible and really encourage students to get out there. So I'm gathering up all kinds of examples all the time and bookmarking them and trying to share them. But I'm very interested in these questions around making this kind of work accessible for people and materially paying people, because it's so much work for community members to go through this stuff. And how do we find the money to pay people? That's or if not pay them, like how do we really support each other with a solidarity economy in the cognitive workload of this type of work? It's a huge issue. Anyways, taking up room. So Eric, you're next.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, I'm Eric. I am in London. I guess I'm an sort of artist, designer, activist, researcher. So I guess I'm here because yeah, so I'm in my third year of my PhD studies as well. And basically, I'm doing a practice-based research into the role of art in activist groups. Kind of quite specifically in the context of the climate crisis, but yes, we know that's kind of the crisis of crises, so it does involve a lot of social justice work and sort of also some community organizing and things of that nature. So as part of my practice, I work with a collective called No Here to Be Liked, and we basically provide like art support for nonviolent civil disobedience. That's kind of why we exist. So we work with activist groups who are specifically engaging in disruptive protests in order to help them both like, I guess, like anchor their work in effective sort of aesthetics and visuals on the one hand, but also sort of working with them, co-creating art and visuals as part of sort of generating everything from strategy to methods to whatnot. So I guess yeah, I'm here because I have a colleague at the UEA where I'm doing my PhD, who told me about the Ljubljana conferences, and there's I think there's a lot of basically because of the nature of the practice itself. So already I work within a collective. There's four of us, so there's a lot of relationships that sort of inform and ground the way we work together, just the four of us. But then because we also constantly sort of engage with and interface with sometimes fairly large groups of self-organized people, I think these questions, and also we do it like from the point of view of a very sort of specialist role, which isn't always readily available in these groups, to wit, like sort of trained artists and designers. So I think these questions of power and sort of dynamics, and also like how to just like engage with a reflexive practice in the context that I'm kind of working with them, but also studying them at the same time, and the difficulties of just a sort of positionality of like, am I here as an activist, or am I here just observing, or am I here actually actively influencing the work? So these questions are sort of constantly there, and I think yeah, a large part of my PhD research sort of grounds itself in these questions. So yeah, I was quite keen to sort of meet others to talk about this in the context of both academic work and activism, which is kind of, I guess, how I came to this and how I read this. I don't know, Kate, did you go? I hate being at the end because I always forget who's been. Oh no, she dropped off.
I think Aviv didn't speak yet, right? Te toca a ti, ¿no, Aviv?
Aviv, yeah.
Soy el último. Okay. Thank you. So I'm calling from a city in the north of England called Hull, where they're celebrating this thing called bonfire nights. So if you hear any explosions, there's people piling up plastic bins and cardboard boxes and making a big fire on a field next to my house, with whatever they can find, and fireworks going on everywhere. So it's quite chaotic, kids running around. That's where I am right now. And my the reason I'm here has to do with also with my history, and it quite relates to what Eric just was telling about. I started out, I don't know when I started out, but I was at maybe the beginning of my kind of journey, I was involved in this kind of overlap between art and protest movements. This was early 2000s, and this thing they used to call the anti-globalization movement. And so it was a little bit similar to what Eric was describing, artistic civil disobedience as part of mass mobilization, and then kind of like through self-critique, kind of started bringing it more and more into civil disobedience and social disobedience in the day-to-day, and then finally just kind of got disillusioned with protest movements in general, and moved to more kind of like neighborhood kind of working, and at some point found this community economy research network, and the work of J.K. Gibson Graham, which kind of like resonated with stuff that I was already doing in this little center in Barcelona, where I was kind of doing my experiments from that I was running, and you know, and with Anna and Heather, really involved in this ABCDE arts-based community / diverse economies group, with the idea that there's that the way art is being viewed, both in social movements and in academia, and even within our networks, sometimes is kind of just as this kind of spoonful of sugar to help the message go down. The message is not defined through arts thinking and arts processes, and I saw that in the work of J.K. Gibson Graham, and in the work of the community, and in the network itself, and in the there's like an openness to this kind of experimental, like kind of like a precarious knowledge building processes that are really artists are like such experts in. And so part of what I think, this is one thing where I think there's like a lot of different perspectives, but one thing we're trying to articulate, the way I see it, at least from this group, is what in artistic processes can actually inform these kind of community economies processes, actually the very logic of experimenting with not knowing what's going to happen, and all these different things that artists do that academics don't tend to do as much. So, and I'm really interested, don't know enough, but really interested in what Christian is doing, and have been for a long time, in what Anna is doing. And just the description was just like, I couldn't miss it, even though, and I'm going to have to apologize because I'm going to have to leave early because I have to put children to bed and stuff like that. So yeah, so I'm apologizing ahead of time. I'll miss a bunch of it, but at least get a taste of what's going to take place, hopefully. Anyone left that didn't speak?
I don't think so. I think we went around, right? Gracias. So Christian, I think it's now my turn to speak about the slide where I explain a little bit of the framework for this session. In this diagram, you're seeing now the relationship on the west side of the picture, meaning to the left. You're seeing how Community Economies Institute, which is the organization that organizes this conference, is related to the Community Economies Research Network. Those are two different entities, yet they are related one to another, una a la otra. And actually, the Community Economies Institute was way back another collective that it was called Community Economies Collective. Yet over time, people who were part of that collective decided to go institutionalized, which is the way we would say it in Spanish. In English, that sounds a little different, but in this case, meaning to go to a formal kind of organization. And so Liviana is a conference that brings together these two organizations. And in the Community Economies Research Network, you are invited to join if you know a couple of people who can introduce you to the network. So if you're not part of the network yet, and you would like to become a part because you're interested and you've been studying this framework or whatever, you may contact people whom you know in this network, like us. Now you know us, and we can start a dialogue if that is something you're interested in. Liviana is an online conference that started in pandemia. There was going to be a face-to-face meeting at that point, organized by the Community Economies Institute, which was created in 2019, and at that point we wanted to put out a face-to-face conference, but then pandemia hit, so we're not able to do that, and instead we conducted the first digital virtual conference called Liviana. You may notice that the name is in Spanish. Puede sonarles que el nombre es en castellano, Liviana. Liviana en castellano quiere decir algo que no es pesado. So liviana means something that is light in a very profound meaning of the word. Not meaning superficial, but meaning engaging and easy to go with. And so the conference is organized in a way that if you want to participate, you can join for free. And also, if you're a part of the institute or the network, you can also be a host to a session you would like to coordinate. So maybe, like I said, if you become a member of the network and next year Liviana comes up and you want to coordinate a session because you're interested in a topic that relates to community economy and diverse economies, you may propose that. The Institute is organized in a way that there's a board that is elected by membership. There's, I think, 53 members to the Institute, not quite sure, but more or less that's the number. I'm part of the board since 2019, actually. And there's also the assembly. Once a year, there's an assembly where membership come together and discuss the policies and themes of the Institute. So over time, these two levels of organization also found that we needed other sort of channels to keep on going with all kinds of tasks that people wanted to get done at the Institute. Entonces se organizaron los working groups or comités. So you see to the right side or to the east, you see Communication and Coordinating Committee, Coordinación y Comunicación, Investigación, Enseñanza y Aprendizaje, y last but not least, Comunidades de Práctica, which is the group in which Christian and I work more specifically. So picking up on what Eric said before, which was something like, I'm not sure whether I'm an activist, a researcher, a participant, all of the above. This, I think, is common to pretty much everybody who's part of the network and the Institute. And some of us, like myself, I think I define myself first as an activist, although I'm an academician. Estoy en la academia. I'm a professor and I'm a national researcher. But since I got interested in doing research first when I was a teacher at an elementary school and a political activist, I always think about research in those terms. But what's interesting about the network, I think, and the Institute is that there's all kinds of different trajectories and experiences of people. People are very different, which is very good. Different in terms of where they're at, what they do, how they think about they do. And I think what's common, though, is that all of us who are in this network and institute want to transform the world to be a place that becomes more just, fairer, a more fair world, if that's an expression I can use in English. For those who are native speakers of English, if there's anything I say in English that sounds funny or you don't understand, you can interrupt me and ask me. I will respond in Sweden or German. Nah. So we can go on to the next slide. Here you see spelled out what our working group, the one in which Christian and I are as part of the board, what is it that we're doing? To the left of this, or to my left of the screen, you are seeing a quote of the annual report put together by the Community Institute. So if you'd like to read the whole report, The link is on the screen and you can have access to that later. To the right, you're seeing the same thing in Spanish translated. And so what we are doing with Christian is that our role is to either support a group that wants to be created. Say in the network, there's an interest in something that has not yet been created, that the research network would like to have a group be formed, then Christian and I could be a support structure to have that become. So far, the groups you're seeing listed are the regional groups and the group that is related to this session. First, on top, you see the Art Space Community and Diverse Economies group, which was referred to already. And then below, you see all the different regional groups by geography. The second to the list is the Community Economies Research Network in Latin America. And the other are self-explanatory, the other groups. And Christian, I think you have opened your menu and it's on the screen. Gracias. Okay, so here we also have a slide that explains what I already said, so we can go on. But before we go on, I think from what people said at the beginning, the way you introduced yourselves and we introduced ourselves, it becomes clear that we're all interested in understanding the meaning of practice. That would be one thing. Also, how to juggle with those different roles that come up for us and what does that mean and how to work those things out in meaningful ways. And also, I think Aviv said something just in passing, but I'd like to bring that up as well, which is that sometimes there's like a difference between people who come more from the side of activism and say grounded practice and people who come more from the side of academic work. Like I said, for me, that's not an issue because I identify with both. Although I experience a lot of tension about that. It's not an issue in the sense that I identify with both, but it may become an issue for me at some points because my university or the Research Council, the National Research Council have their rules and their bureaucracy that I don't precisely agree with. And I much more agree with the work we do with Pablo and other people in our team that is autogestionado, self-organized, direct democracy kind of work. So in that sense, I do experience tension, and maybe that's part of your interest as well in being here in this session. So we can go to the next slide. And here is a link. And so you have received an email that maybe you did have a chance to look at, or maybe not, where we told you that we are going to be working with images and photos or pictures. That's going to happen. It's going to start right now. So Christian will put on the chat a link to that. Okay, they're there already. Perfecto. And so this slide is just telling you that in this folder, there are pictures that either we put in or you put in or we collectively put in. And now in the next slide, I pass the word to Christian because he will guide you through the prompts. Gracias.
Thank you, Anna. So yeah, our thinking here was, this is a session about practice and there's going to be arts-based stuff. So let's have part of it where we do an interactive activity. And the activity that we've set up is like an interactive collaging. So I have put in the chat a bunch of links. There's a link to this slideshow, which has these prompts, as well as some other, there's 3 slides below this one. And the idea is that we will put some images in there and we will all manipulate those images and do what we want with them. So there is also a folder that's linked there that has a bunch of different images in it. And you can go into that folder, you can select whatever images or image you want, and then you can paste them into the slides underneath this one. And if you have like other software that can do photo editing or like make interesting shapes out of things, you could use that. And the idea is that anybody can paste anything in there and anybody can move anything around. There is also a document that has text. So you could paste some text in there if you want to, or if you, for whatever reason, can't work with the images, you could type stuff into the text document. So you should have all of those links in the chat. And so the idea is we would take 10, 15 minutes here to have you go in, look at those images, and just play around with them, all the while noting sort of how it feels. You are working with other people. Maybe other people are doing things to the thing you did. And so those feelings we're going to use to then segue into a conversation about all the themes that are in the abstract and all the things that you have all already actually started to bring up. So does everybody have the links? And then is everybody relatively clear on what we are doing? This is meant to be just a fun thing to kind of get us in the mindset. Are there any immediate questions?
Yeah, ¿alguien quiere preguntar algo?
Great, we got a thumbs up from Berlin. They're ready to go. Okay. And you can always, you can chat us if you have questions as well. Okay. I'm
Christian,
gonna set a timer.
if you feel like it, we can play some music. If not, we won't. Whatever.
Okay. I'll play some music in the background. Pencils down.
It's addictive.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Aviv, you can bring your daughters to collage.
I'm not at home. I'm in this community
Ah.
center we have that just down the street from my house. But yeah, I would actually.
Eric, what's your daughter's name?
Do you want to say what your name is?
Morris.
Yeah, their name is Morris.
Don't they want to participate as well? Collaging?
Morris helped loads with the collaging. Yeah, we did it together.
Ah, buenísimo. Dankeschön. No, tak, right? Sí. Muy bien. So I'll pass it to you or to me. Can't recall, Christian. I think it's me with the next slide.
I think it's you too.
Right?
I will just say, I wasn't able to look at the collages because I was doing the music. And I came back and it's pretty exciting. So I'm excited to hear what you all thought about it.
Good. Thank you. Do you want to put up the slide or should I just talk with no slide, which I can do because everybody's has access to a slide. Actually, you know what, Christian, maybe I was thinking that it may be better not to have it. Right, that's better. The collages are better. Good, gracias. Entonces, ¿qué te hace pensar o sentir la actividad que acabamos de realizar si es que querés compartirlo? What, if anything, did the activity we conducted make you think or feel if you would like to share? ¿Esta actividad tiene alguna relación metafórica o concreta con el tipo de trabajo que tú realizas? Does what took place in the activity relate in any way, metaphorically or concretely, with the kind of work you do? So open for debate. Dale, Aviv.
I'm going to say something negative to start the conversation on a negative tone. I think it looks really great. you know, so that's the not the negative part. And I think I love how people just kind of layered and moved stuff around, but you guys took a risk and you just kind of gave us your PowerPoint. And then there were like 2 pages where people put images, there were blank pages, and no one stuck images all over your PowerPoint, and everyone just kind of painted in the within the lines. No one was cheeky and started like illustrating your words or messing with them or making fun of them or taking them in new places through visuals. So it felt like a bit obedient the way we interacted with this game. And also I'm gonna apologize, because in 5 minutes I'm gonna have to leave, so I'm gonna miss out on this, but I'll look at the recording.
Gracias. That's a good point. ¿Alguien más? Creo que Clio quiere hablar y después Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had this similar reflection, but maybe coming from it from another point. I feel like the fact that I don't know any of you really, and we're all working, like putting stuff in there together, and like the first thing that happened was that someone else took an image I wanted to use, and I was like, oh, I don't want to put it there, I want to put it somewhere else. But then I felt like, why do I immediately start to go and edit someone else's thing when there's a whole blank page I can work on? And I think there was like, because very often, like, I'm used to doing this the other way around. Like, you'd bring something to a group and then let them do the collaging and then bring it back to us. Like, it's much more like ping-pongy usually. And it was kind of interesting how timid I felt I became all of a sudden. So I think that kind of connects to what Aviv just said.
Let's have it. So if you see someone else has risen their hand, like you just finished talking, if you see someone else whose hand is up, you can pass the word, okay? So can you pass the word, Eric?
Sorry, I didn't see I had the little miniatures off. Yeah, I'm going to pass to Cleo.
Yeah, I also like really had something that really stuck with me, that my computer would not cooperate for a while, and I really had this frustration of I just could not. I had to log into something to be able to download, and I was like, I can't drag things, and it really made me reflect on asking people to do things. And like for today, for example, I was involved in a workshop and we were asking people to draw something, and someone said like, oh, I can't draw, I don't want to take part in this. And the response of the facilitator was like, oh no, everyone can draw, don't worry, it's fine. But like this exercise actually really made me think about that response and like how frustrating it is to want to take part in something or want to be part of something and be involved, but not physically being able to do something or not, yeah. And the frustration that caused. So it's kind of made me rethink how I respond to people who present or say that they don't want to or they're not able to, and not just to have to like frustratingly convince them to, that like taking that much more seriously, I think, because yeah, it was very interesting for me to be on the other side and yeah, feel this frustration. But then once I managed to, it was very enjoyable. So I don't know if that also implies if we can get people over the hurdle, they might enjoy it. But that was something that I really felt during this. I'll pass the speaking to Pablo.
Gracias, Clio. Sí, me pasó algo creo que similar, como que tenía muy pocas herramientas para trabajar en lo digital virtual. Y todos los cortes eran capturas de pantalla y medio cuadrado lo que yo podía hacer. Después, por suerte, había compañeras y compañeros que tenían otras habilidades, como ir transformando los colores o haciendo cortes más precisos sobre las imágenes. Y después también me iba llamando la atención cómo se iban estabilizando las diferentes slides a medida que íbamos volcando imágenes, iban tomando para mí algún tipo de sentido. No sé muy bien cuál, pero algún tipo de sentido iban tomando y se iban estabilizando. Así que con eso paso la palabra a Laura.
So we also struggled first to find out how to, okay, we have to download, but we have to be quick. And then everybody already added something, and then but then we found out, and then I think it was very interesting to see at one point that we duplizieren, was heißt duplizieren?
Copied.
We
Yeah.
copied a picture that we added in, and then somebody else edited on it, and then we could see, okay, one of our thoughts is continued by somebody else. That was very impressive, I think. Do you know was?
I agree.
Copy in German is duplizieren.
Duplizieren, yeah.
Ah.
Kind of, yeah.
I don't know how to raise my hand on this new Zoom thing that I have. Sorry, can I just my hand? I started a poem. I just put some words from the thing in the poem section and just made a poem. And then I felt also kind of confined. So I put a picture of my clown instructor with her head exploding. That's how I feel with this, like a lot of work lately. And then also I felt in the corner down, I thought also my brain wandered. I work with it's a long story, but international students who are paying a huge fees to study in Canada. There's no housing in the small town where the university is. So I put this little picture, I took it from my photos. It's in the bottom here. People are being from India, Vietnam, Nigeria that are paying huge student fees are living in these temporary housing buildings that are the same housing that used for pipeline and miners, and they're not supposed to be lived in through the winter. So the university rebranded it, calling it the Coyote Den. They're giving it a fancy name. It's really it's cold. And anyways, I was thinking of students with really bad links to technology, and then I'm trying to get them to do community design work and just like all so anyway, so I put the exploding head person there. But yeah, how do we live with these contradictions and sense of yeah. And in clown I learn a lot about diaphragm breathing and being in your body, but I sit a lot, and so I'm trying to move around a lot. Anyway, so I like the photos, and I wrote a poem, and then I thought of my exploding head clown friend and the students in temporary buildings with bad IT that are supposed to stay on top of things. So I don't know. That's my bleak thing. So yeah, I went in and dragged around my own photos. But I like the photos and just brought in my own photos.
I'm raising my hand. Can I go? Nobody else wants to talk? I was thinking about what Aviv said about being obedient and about playing within the rules. So I was thinking whether, and I linked that with what Cleo was saying when she also reflected on what Aviv said about this, and how sometimes we provide prompts or frameworks or want to establish relationships with people, and yet it may not make sense to that specific group of people or certain individuals, and what kind of power struggle goes on there. I was trying also to think whether or not, as we went along with the images, because I think Laura or Michelle were saying that they put something and then someone else was putting something else where they had put something and this and that, and in a way they reflected on that was a continuation of what they were doing, but it may also feel as if someone is intervening in not a very nice way their work. So I was thinking whether or not some feelings about that came up when we were playing with the images. ¿A alguien le pasó eso? Did anybody feel that their work was not respected or something because they had put something in one place and someone else put something else? So if there's no
I-
response
Oh, I was
to
gonna
that,
say,
we
I
can leave
wrote
it there.
some
Yeah, go ahead.
poem.
Dale, dale.
I wrote a poem and then I liked, it was, someone was writing in Spanish above it, and I appreciated that because I had no idea what I was reading. And it was this conversation happening, but I didn't know, I don't speak or read Spanish. So I was having a written conversation, it felt like, with someone, but I don't know who it was. So I appreciated that. It was like disorienting. Yeah, that felt just like this space of disorientation, but it was a nice feeling.
Mm, okay, so far in our small group, disorientation was kind of good. Nothing major happened. Christian, do you want to go to the slide where we put the questions, or else we can leave the pictures here, and you guys, since you have access to the PPT, whatever way you'd like, there's the questions we thought we could get into at this part of the session, which are listed on slide number 15. So what we thought at this point of the session was that you can read the questions and think whether any other question speaks to your work, your interests, your ideas. Pueden leer las preguntas y ver si hay alguna de estas preguntas que les llama más la atención, que tiene más que ver con su trabajo, con sus ideas. Elegirla y empezar a hablar. You can choose whatever question you'd like to address and just start talking, and we'll be dialoguing across questions and ideas. If there are questions that you don't see here and you would like to pose, we are going to open another slide, number 16, where we can also put more questions in case none of the questions you're seeing here are interesting to you. So we give some time to read, and when someone wants to start, they start. And I would say, Christian, that you and I relax and don't coordinate this part. We can be part of the group if you agree with what I'm saying, and just muy bien, leave it open
I would
to
just add
conversation.
2 things real quick. So the first is that these are some of the questions we've been asking different people in different spaces that we're trying to understand in our work. So in a way, you are, we're very glad to have you here and have your knowledge. If you have any experiences working with the groups that you're working with, we already talked about some of this in the introductions when people were talking about the work they were doing. So I think, like, you know, the first question we've already started to speak to, but we'd be really curious to hear from people about how you experience these things in the work that you're doing. And the second thing is just that our idea for the session was to have some of these tensions should, you know, the collaging process would bring up questions of access and power, negotiation, some of these flux and change, and some of these other kinds of things. So maybe that worked, maybe it didn't, but that's the connection there. So we'd love to hear people's thoughts if you have them.
I could go if you want, or I can't. Oh, Eric, you go, your hand's up.
No, I don't want to be the white guy who starts talking. You go first and I'll go after.
Well, I'm a white woman talking, so okay. I'm just trying to, okay, so I'm going to be speaking next week with someone I've been collaborating with. I define my work, I don't know, it's more like arts-based research creation work around urban inequalities, precarious work, and long-term relationships. This is interesting because I've had different contracts in Toronto, and then I had 2 postdocs in Glasgow, and then now I'm working in Western Canada. And some of my I've maintained I started my PhD in 2008. So some of the foundational a lot of my work in feminist performance, I work with people I've known for years, like from the early 2000s. And I'm really uncomfortable. It takes me time to build relationships. I found in the UK, you're supposed to go make impact immediately and work with communities. And I felt like I don't know people, and it felt really fast and furious and kind of extractive and parasitic and colonial. So I tried to really be honest and open with the community organizations I worked with, because I felt like there was pressure to go build community. So anyway, but I keep going back to some of the early people I worked with and trying who are artists, some who are precarious, who in their 50s went and did PhDs so that they could get research and teaching contracts because they're precarious. So I tend to work with quite precarious people who aren't the big heavy hitters that get the big grants. So I find a lot of our work is trying to find big grant holders that'll work with us. So there's a huge power in equity, and the people who write about the stuff tend to be a lot younger and slick, and then my friends who can't get the grants. So there's that. I'm trying to negotiate that. I also have worked with the past 5 years 2 Indigenous artists in Tecumloops. It's 4 hours from Vancouver in the mountains where I grew up. And I'm very, very, very mindful of the power imbalances of I don't want to be extractive and speak for Indigenous artists. At the same time, we do really hilarious work, and we're finding the university very strict. Like we did an ethics review process last year, and we made these porta potty art. Like we made this comedic project about the portable toilet is the new tiny house, just because there's so many forest fires and floods. Then the university research ethics kept writing to me, telling me that I was working with traditional Indigenous knowledge and I had to be really careful. And then my Indigenous comedian friends are like, porta potties aren't traditional Indigenous knowledge. So kind of like the heavy-handedness of a settler working with an Indigenous community is really bureaucratic. So then the Indigenous artists I work with think that's hilarious. And so, but trying to really take seriously writing grants, and I'm trying to use my job to leverage writing grants to get money to disinvested artists, and be really mindful of, yeah, just the system is so, as we know, it's very institutionalized. There's a lot of grants and connection grants. And just last week, I sent off a grant to try to pay some of my colleague or community, the artists I work with. And the grant system, the Canadian grant system for the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council grant, it was so strict. It wanted to know what institution someone worked for, what division they worked for, the title. And I work with people that have all these contracts, and then the bios, the art statements, and it's supposed to be collaborative. So it's just so frustrating. So I keep trying to picture myself like a beaver or like a little animal going around and chewing the wires and swimming around in this bizarre world and redirecting things and building things. So it's tiring. And I sometimes feel like my academic colleagues, they're very excited to do this work, but they don't do the beaver chewing, writing, the really boring admin detail. Like, so yeah, I wish we had more awareness of the amount of work that is. So I work with yeah, I'm really, really mindful of not trying to capture stuff into this work. So I'm going to end. My friend last week, one of my favorite artists I work with based in Montreal, who is also part of the grant I applied to, she cited the Black theorist Fred Moten, who said the universities are criminal enterprises and that we should be pirates and use what we can to undercommon and work to build undercommons. So that's trying to think of like beavers or creatures that go around and build things underneath and around. But yeah, I could go on, but the sensitivity and the care that to create relationships, and then the time frames of what the university wants and the knowledge mobilization, the impact. There's a real disconnect, as we know. So how I'm trying to be open and reflexive without being completely overwhelming, and people don't want to hear me process with them about that. I just want to get people money and space and time so they can make their art. Okay, so I hope that made sense. Go.
Yeah, maybe I'll go just because I also have kids who need to go to bed, so I might also have to duck out early. Um, I think, I don't know, I feel like in the introduction I made it sound like I wasn't clear on my own position, but I am very clear. Like I feel I'm the reason I'm interested in agentic art, as I call it, like sort of art that performs some sort of function of change in culture or society, is because I want to make a change. Like that's literally why I'm doing the work I'm doing. So I'm definitely an activist first and an artist, and also I guess I'm a researcher. But I one thing that I think a lot about, so like my first year at PhD, I had to learn like about social science methodologies and reflexive frameworks, and like sort of how to perform autoethnography in responsible ways, and there was lots of things which I found extremely interesting, and that all connected to like existing relationships that I already had in these sort of big decentralized groups and movements. um, and it sort of provided a language for me to think about this more deeply and to sort of, I guess, engage with it in a more detached way, which I feel is how academia deals with everything. But then after my first year, I mean, I basically had a bit of a, not to tell you my life story, but I had a bit of a crisis, identity crisis. And I felt like I felt like I was cosplaying being a social scientist. And it was like basically really interfering with the relationships and the work, because it gave me all this knowledge that nobody else in these spaces had. And I didn't actually find that knowledge useful. Like I find that knowledge useful in terms of writing a thesis, sure. Um, but in terms of the interpersonal relationships within these groups, there are already processes in place in lots of these movements. Like a nonviolent communication is like being taught in pretty much all the spaces I'm in. And bigger groups like Extinction Rebellion had like a whole conflict circle who was sort of in charge of dealing with conflict, and we were all kind of trained from early on, I think, to recognize power and power imbalances. And there was always talk about sort of the movement being a leaderful movement, but not a movement full of leaders, in a way, to sort of enable people to be able to take responsibility for their work, etc., and all that. So I think there's something about the scholarly way of like defining power, which at least for me personally, wasn't necessarily very helpful, because I felt like most of it I had gained some sort of intuitive grasp of just through working in a decentralized and holistic way. There's one thing I think which I'm finding though, like now, because I used to be in a movement like that, used to be sort of in one place. That was my job, and so I was interfaced. Like I had a role, which was I was the coordinator of the art group, along with my colleague, and basically there was like the job was kind of like holding, I guess, the artistic aspects of this big climate movement, and sort of both like bringing lots of ideas to the movement itself through, I don't know, workshops, toolkits, and things for people to just get on with doing things. But there was also like this power we had because we were the people who ultimately had responsibility for the budgets to produce things. So there was always a point where we kind of had to make a call on things. And that produced like an enormous amount of friction. And that's something I think about, which is quite specific to like art in a way, because at some point something has to be made. And it made me reflect on this, like some of the comments on the collaging, is that it's fine if it's just like it's something that goes on forever and ever, like everyone just keeps changing everything around, and that's fine. We're all just engaged in the process. But as soon as you have like an outcome and a deadline, like at some point you just have to say stop, and you have to find some money or people, and then you have to make the thing, and there's decisions that need to happen. And that's a very touchy position for lots of people, because ultimately you start thinking about things like color, which is extremely subjective, or you start thinking about representation, which is less subjective, but lots of people will have different opinions on like what representation entails in communication or art more broadly. And I don't know, it's just I feel like there's something about the practice of art, and especially like collective art, where there is this sort of, you can sort of mitigate for power as much as you want, but ultimately like someone is going to be in charge of deciding what the actual final thing is. And I think like that's the one thing I feel like I personally, like in my practice, I haven't really found a cure for. I don't know that there is a cure, if that's the word I'm looking for, but yeah, there's something around that, because like the art is the thing that people see ultimately. Like that's the big sort of at least in the kind of art that I deal with, like that's the thing that ends up in newspapers. So that's the lasting image of things. But yeah, I feel like the collaging made me think about that, because there was something very open-ended about it, which I'm not used to.
Cleo, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I guess what Eric has been saying has made me think a little bit and connected to something that, like what you were saying about like the decision making and the power, and that ultimately decisions have to be made. And I'm also interested in what you were saying about like the activist kind of approach to collective decision making, and these kind of practices that are already embedded in a lot of social movements. And I guess I was just kind of, when you were speaking there, I was kind of reflecting on how I feel like academia has, in general, is what I've learned in the past year, first year of my PhD, is that like it's absolutely riddled with this hierarchy. And I think I wasn't quite expecting that so much, having come from similarly having been involved in some activism and some really advanced ways of addressing group processes, to then go into this hierarchical process where, and I'm working collaboratively, I'm kind of the lowest rung of this hierarchy of people involved in an artistic project that I'm involved in. And I guess just the blatancy of how that hierarchy manifests itself, and also made me think of the different tacts that are used to kind of exercise that power. So, for example, I don't know, humor is sometimes used, and yeah, I don't know, I guess just like this lack of care. And I think also within the academic stages that I'm going through, how I'm experiencing like events such as like progress reviews that are ultimately very helpful, but that are constructed in such an uncaring way, of like, maybe the content of what comes about it through it is very helpful, but it's so uncaring and it's so unattentive to these power dynamics. And then differently, still thinking about power dynamics, I think I've been thinking about how to, I guess, facilitate workshops in ways. I think a question that I kind of would have for the group that I would really love to have some advice on is how to address like pre-existing power dynamics within a group. And I think recently have been having experiences where some members of a group of participants have been making others feel unwelcome, and I'm not so sure how to deal with that, as like I kind of don't want to interfere and I don't want to assert my own power to facilitate a more open discussion, but I also don't want to leave things unsaid so that people who are experiencing exclusion don't feel like it's just taken for granted that that's fine. So if anybody had any advice on that, I would very much appreciate it. But I'll pass to speaking to Pablo.
Thank you. Bueno, ¿puedo seguir hablando en español?
Yo voy a hacer una cosa, espera. When you speak, when Pablo speaks, I'm going to try and translate some of what he's saying, because I can't type that fast in the chat. So you can go with the
I
flow.
can,
Dale.
but if I don't know, how can I develop my ideas in
No,
English?
no es lo que dije. No es lo que...
No, no,
Te
ya,
dije que hables en castellano y yo
ya
traduzco.
entendí que vas a tratar de traducir. También te estoy diciendo que puedo. Bueno, a mí lo que me pasa con los posicionamientos o las etiquetas vinculadas con si alguien proviene de la academia o es activista, es que al momento de integrarse en un grupo, ya se clausura en esa posición. Y me gusta más pensar que el grupo mismo va solicitando algo que hacer adentro de ese grupo. Por lo menos es lo que a mí me fue sucediendo. Como que entiendo que hay un rechazo generalizado hacia lo que es la academia o también, no sé, definirse de alguna manera. Y eso genera algún tipo de tensiones y pujas de poder adentro de los grupos. Y me parece que la práctica, que también creo que era una consigna acá de lo que se está buscando en Liviana en particular, de definir lo que la práctica es, me parece que las prácticas artísticas como que suavizan estos posicionamientos que se van poniendo adelante del grupo o poniendo dentro de los grupos, ¿no? Digo, como que la práctica artística, más allá de que sea muy difícil definir quién es artista, quién no es artista, para mí todo el mundo tiene un potencial artista que se va desarrollando de alguna manera. Como que la práctica artista suaviza este tipo de comunicaciones y la generación de conocimiento dentro de los grupos. Y en ese sentido, la práctica esta del collage que trajeron acá, gracias Cristian y gracias Anita por traer la práctica esta del collage, creo que se replica también en la forma de relacionarnos como activistas, académicos, no sé, personas, seres humanos, con otras cositas adentro de los grupos que entendemos que se va formando algo que se va buscando. Y sí, también surgen tensiones, surgen, no sé, cosas positivas, a veces se hace un poquito más difícil o no, pero bueno, creo que hay una convicción ulterior a todo esto ulterior, perdón Anita, no sé qué estarás escribiendo, ahora voy a leer. Creo que hay una convicción que moviliza al grupo y
Sorry,
eso.
I'm going to translate this because otherwise it looks as if we're
Okay.
sharing a secret. We are not. It's just that he was saying, I'm not sure how you're translating this, and I'm curious to see what you're writing because you're writing like crazy. So you'll have to trust me in a way. I'm trying my best.
A mí en la actualidad estoy participando de dos grupos, lo último que digo, en la actualidad estoy participando de dos grupos donde se encuentran para mí de una forma muy fuerte atravesados por lo que es el arte y eso me enseña mucho. Y a la vez que me enseña mucho, y creo que es algo parecido a lo que decía Heather, me va poniendo enfrente todas estas trabas institucionales y burocráticas que propone la academia y me genera una especie de rechazo hacia lo que la academia es. Y eso es una especie de duelo que estoy transitando ahora en la actualidad. Es difícil reconocerse o no reconocerse como algo, pero sí tengo que decir que se me produce algún tipo de rechazo hacia la academia. Paso palabra, quien quiera. Gracias, Ana, por
What's the
la...
word in English for mourning, right? For duelo. When you lose something or someone, you go into a mourning process, right? Mourning. Right. That's confusing to me. It's like not mourning, but mourning. Whatever. So I wrote duelo because I couldn't find the English word, but it's mourning. Thank you. That's it. Thanks. So since I started speaking, I'll go on and speak. As to ways of overcoming the stiffness of academia, I think probably we all have our tricks. I get a kick out of challenging bureaucracy. And so I do like to do administration work because it puts me in a place where I can bend the rules. But I have found over time that many of my colleagues or even people in our team do not like what it entails to administrate whatever is at hand. And therefore, in my sight, from my point of view, it's kind of a pity because they lose the excitement that it can provide if you go into trying to bend the rules in ways that are more just or fair or even to distribute whatever is at hand. And even though I agree with Eric in that when you compete for a grant and you get it and whatever, you're expected to have an outcome. And in a way, if I am the principal researcher, I have to produce something. I understand that, I agree with that. Yet the way we've been doing that in our group is that we explain this to people we work with, and because the way we have been working is that we work with the same groups for very long periods of time, like 15 years or 20 years or 8 years. Maybe at the beginning, the first grant we applied for, we were more like within the boundaries, kind of what happened today, within the slides, within the boundaries. But then after a while, if trust is built, then you can juggle with things, and it's usually pronounced the same, morning and morning. Thank you. I'm reading the chat. So I was saying that if trust is built, then the rules can be bent in a more playful way with everybody participating in the bending, which I get a total kick out of. Yet, I can also attest to situations whereby our team has worked with other groups. This is related to what you were asking, Cleo, which is a great question. What happens when you encounter a group with whom you would like to work, want to work, start working, and there's power dynamics going on there already that you see as not fair? Do you intervene? I guess that on the one hand, the experience we have is that when you start to work with any group you start to work with, you're intervening anyhow. So I'm like I think you are intervening anyhow. So that's one thing. Yet I get what you're saying. Is like, one thing is that the relationship is starting to be built, and then by that relationship building, some intervention is happening. A different thing is to call on it and say, hey, I don't like what's happening here, for example, or it makes me uncomfortable. And so going back to what I was saying about trust, sometimes it has happened with our team and our work that we establish a relationship, and over time we cannot continue the relationship exactly because of these issues. Because it's not only within their group, it's also what happens in the in-between that starts to be permeated by those ideologies of domination. So power of domination, also going to the issue that Eric brought about definition of power in social sciences and the academia, and not finding those definitions very useful. I usually, when I lecture in the classes, I'm a teacher, I usually qualify when I say power of domination or power in dispersion. I'm translating here, but dispersing power. I qualify power. I don't want to assume that one, we understand the same thing when we say power, and two, that power immediately means power over someone or over something. It can also mean having the power to do something together, for example. And just one last comment regarding that. I think it's almost 7 years ago, I wrote a book in Spanish about a psychoanalyst who was contemporary to Freud. He was Hungarian, Sándor Ferenczi, I'll write the name in a minute in the chat. And through his work, I conceptualized the notion of poder en madre, and mothering power, not meaning necessarily power that a mother could have, but a power that is dispersed and everybody can relate to generate something new. In that respect, yes, it does relate a bit to gestation and creation, but it is a power being dispersed. I'm inspired in this by the work of this psychoanalyst, but also by other philosophies that we can talk about at another point. I think that the German trio hasn't spoken yet in this part of the night. It's midnight already for you, right? It's I know.
No, not yet. It's 9:45, so no.
It's not guten Abend yet.
Still, but not midnight.
So do you want to make any comments to the questions we posed, or if you want to write any other questions or comments that come up in your mind, there's slide 16 to do that. I also put the reference to the music we were listening to. So I pass the word on to whomever wants to take it up.
I'll just add back to what Cleo was saying. Cleo, I think that and also what Pablo, we have to be really mindful of, like, these are institutional categories that we can constantly play with and shift. And the good thing for me, the Community Economies Research Network, the people I've met through this over the years, there's all these coalitional possibilities to work kind of within and against and around these really restrictive, very my PhD was at York University in Canada, which was very practice oriented. The average age of this PhD students was 38, and a lot of us had worked in activism. And going from that to British Academy was very difficult for my mental health. Like, I really did not. It's so restrictive and so top down. The grants I brought in, my mentors even literally got raises for them, and my work, like, it was just so wild. But then the coalitional possibilities of people I met along the way, I'm working with now. And I think I personally am trying to really train myself, not just to keep shifting around and be, there's a lot of really decolonial, critical, anti-colonial, like, there's so many examples of people who've shifted these types of institutions, Black women, Indigenous, Latinx, like, there's so many radical examples. So for me, in my imagination, I felt got quite limited and frustrated by that, but there's such a fluidity in building with people, like, in this network, that, or like, yeah, okay, that's the category, let's keep swimming. And I'm going to also post lately for me the work of Dean Spade. They're a critical legal theorist from Seattle. They're a trans legal theorists, and they write a lot about how do we build community in really difficult times. And they have a really beautiful book called Love in a Fucked Up World. But I'm going to post, they interview activists all over right now, like in Chicago, like people working together, and how do we face the difficulties of working together. And those podcasts to me are so powerful. But also, Dean Spade is a legal theorist in a university institution. They use their job to have these really difficult conversations. So I think I just want to keep flexing the muscle of not getting caught in who's an artist, an activist, an academic. Oh, this outcome is frustrating. Like, there definitely are restrictive institutions. And then there's all these hilarious people around the world. Wonderful, for me, funny is important, but wonderful, like, we're shifting around and we're using these positions to build something different. And I think we can't let our imaginations and bodies get caught in those categories, because then they win. And they're old and crusty colonial extractive things that, here, I'm going to put this is one of the episodes. Miriam Kaba a Black feminist activist. She writes about how hope is a muscle and we have to practice it all the time. And I think finding radical hope in the top-down outcomes, university, impact, like all, it can be overwhelming, but like Anna said, there's something joyful about figuring it out and weaseling around and getting money to different people, and it's building something different. Okay. I just had my
Gracias.
coffee. I'm like, "Yeah," but these are my friends. Over when I make my lunch, I'm like, oh my God, this podcast is great. So I would check out his podcasts. It's a really wonderful start, but he draws a lot from bell hooks and radical
So you're gonna
academic.
paste those links in the chat?
There's one
Or
right
can
there,
you-
Marion Kaba. But go to
great.
Dean Spade and listen.
Great.
Yeah, the critical legal theorist is opening a whole world of solidarity that's needed right now. So, okay,
There were a couple of questions in the chat. No, my book is not translated, although I did write a couple of pieces in English about his work that I can refer you to. So if you write me an email, I'll be very happy to respond. For the German crew, could we ask you to say something in German about what comes up to your mind in German? Just say it in German.
German?
See,
Okay.
Deutsch, bitte.
Genau.
Okay, I think that's very hard for me now to speak in German.
Come on, in German. You can say whatever you want because maybe we don't understand a word. Or maybe we do.
Okay, then I will say something in German. Ich glaube, also ich habe auf jeden Fall das Gefühl, dass sehr viele Themen, die gerade aufkamen und besprochen wurden, also genau, auch genau die Themen beschäftigen, mit denen wir uns beschäftigen. Also so verschiedene Power Dynamics in der sozialen Arbeit, in der Forschung und dann auch in der Interaktion mit KlientInnen und überhaupt dem Ansatz in der sozialen Arbeit, in der Praxis forschen zu wollen.
Power dynamics in work.
Yeah, I think, I can also say something in
No,
English.
We're experimenting here.
Experimenting.
We're creating.
Okay, great.
Language is an art as well.
Ja. Ja, was ich auf jeden Fall so spannend fand an dieser Übung mit den Bildern zusammenfügen, war, dass genau, es irgendwie so ein kollektiver Prozess war, im Endeffekt sich alle Personen irgendwie darauf eingelassen haben und daraus was entstanden ist. Und sicherlich irgendwie an der einen oder anderen Stelle das mit Unbehagen einherging, weil es so war, okay, ich hätte das Bild jetzt irgendwie woanders hingemacht oder ich definiere Kunst für mich irgendwie anders. Deswegen finde ich es so jetzt nicht schön, aber es haben sich alle drauf eingelassen und irgendwie ist was entstanden, woraus dann auch ganz viel Diskurs entstanden ist. Und das war so ein kollektives Erlebnis für mich, was ich sehr interessant fand. Wollt ihr noch was sagen?
Ich hatte das Gefühl, dass viele eine negative Perspektive auf unseren Prozess geworfen haben und ich wäre gar nicht auf die Idee gekommen, Nachteile dieser Methode zu betrachten, sondern ich habe sie als sehr bereichernd empfunden.
Dankeschön. Erik, do you want to say something in Swedish again? I know you spoke a little bit of Swedish at the beginning.
Oui, ou sinon en français, je sais pas. Je parle plusieurs langues.
Okay.
Nej, svenska. Ja, det är jättesvårt. Jag har inget akademiskt språk på svenska överhuvudtaget. Läser inte riktigt akademiska texter på svenska. Jag har ju typ inga aktivistkompisar som pratar svenska heller. Så att det var en svår grej du bad mig att göra. Jag har liksom ingen jag saknar ord. Vilket känns konstigt, för jag brukar inte vara en person som saknar ord, men just nu så gör jag det. Och om jag säger att jag saknar ord så känner jag kanske också att jag borde sluta prata, men alla tittar på mig så himla, jag vet inte, som att ni följer med i vad jag säger, även fast ni uppenbarligen inte gör det. Det här är en väldigt, väldigt märklig upplevelse. But yeah, I'll stop there. Thanks for offering. That was a profoundly strange experience.
Tack. So I think I will pass the word on to Christian, who will be doing the closing. Muchas gracias. I can say something in Mapuche, just one sentence. Buenos Aires waria is meu tuun. Vel Buenos Aires waria is meu mogelen. I said I was born in Buenos Aires and I live in Buenos Aires. That's all the Mapuche I remember from, I think 20 years I took a course in Mapuche language. Passing the word.
Cleo, you want to add some Irish?
Ceapan de gná gohfuil an teanga Gaeilge beagnach fágtha den conversation agus is teanga freisin agus níl mór an daoine atá ag leabhartás Gaeilge agus ceapan gur féidirling níos mó déanaí a dhéanamh.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I think the closing is mainly thank you. And this feels like it's been very generative. I will say Anna and I are working on this project. So if you have continued thoughts, continued questions, resources that you would send along, hopefully you know where to find us. We could put our emails in the chat, but we'd love to be in touch. If I had one thing to add to this, I would say that networks and knowing other people who are doing this kind of work can be really useful at different stages in different ways. Cleo, you have a hand up again.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt, but just wanted to say that from my perspective, just kind of, I'd be really interested, I don't know if others would, but in, I don't know, some sort of email chain where, for me, I would really appreciate any kind of key resources that people have or key texts. I'm trying to work on my literature review and I would be very keen to spread it as broad as possible outside of my own scope at the moment. So if that was something people were willing to do, I think it could be really nice.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah. And so that could be one thing we do in our role as the little subcommittee that we have, is collect resources related to this. And to my mind, a lot of that would be, resources about other people who are out there who are thinking about this stuff, but also maybe resources in relationship to process. So, you all might be working on different things, but one of the interesting spaces to me for somebody who straddles activism and academia is to think about the processes that different groups might use, or that you might use in different kinds of situations. So kind of processes, protocols, ways of negotiating these questions, different kinds of tools and toolkits and things like that. So if you have any of those kinds of things, anybody who's in this room, or if somebody's watching this session, because it's going to be recorded and hopefully other people will watch it, please send us that information and we can collect different things and try to think about different things ourselves, and then follow up with different folks. So I see people putting emails in the chat, which is great. We can collect those and then we can follow up with resources that other people bring in, or that we find. And ask other folks in your networks too, if you have other people you're working with who are thinking about similar things. It'd be cool to put together a collection of this stuff.
I have to leave, but before leaving, I'd like to say that in Argentina, oftentimes when we end a meeting or a gathering, it depends on what kind of meeting, we say something out loud that refers to acknowledging the fact that there's been people murdered and killed because of their struggle. and we say 30,000 compañeros detenidos, desaparecidos, presentes, ahora y siempre. And people repeat, ahora y siempre. So if you'd like to join me, I will say, and then I will ask you to repeat if you feel like it. And if you don't feel like it, just feel free not to. So if you're going to respond to my call, you need to open your mic. And if you don't, you just don't open it, it's fine. 30,000 compañeros detenidos, desaparecidos, presentes, ahora y siempre.
Ahora
y
Ahora
siempre.
y siempre. Gracias.
Ahora y siempre.
Gracias.
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 Gracias, Christian. I gotta go.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Good luck with everything.
Gracias. I need luck.